So JJ McCollough just did another video that I agree with 90% of what he said in there, but some of it was kind of just a little bit disingenuous. Just sort of like, okay, I get where he's coming from, but I understand what he's saying, but and maybe I'm being a little nitpicky. And basically, what he's saying is that Donald Trump allowed into the Republican Party this sort of outright sentiment that previous presidents, or previous Republican presidents at least, never would have. And these previous Republican presidents would have done their best to at least to either suppress that element, that sort of outright or that sort of racist element of the party that they always knew existed, but wanted it to sort of not exist. And I feel like JJ understands that that's part of both Canadian and American society. And these are people that deserve to be represented at least in some way, and they deserve to be part of society. And he probably understands that they probably have some legitimate gripes, certainly economically. A lot of these people are from the South, which has lost a lot of its manufacturing base. They probably have some economic gripes from that. It's probably fair. Trump, certainly in 2016, grasped onto that. And JJ's argument is that allowing that in has shifted the GOP, and he thinks that once Trump is defeated this year, and hopefully that's all going to be gone, and Donald Trump is going to be gone, and everything's going to be gone forever, and we'll be able to suppress it again. For one, I don't think that's really true. First of all, I think that a shift has occurred in the Republican Party. A shift has occurred in the Democratic Party as well. And these shifts occur in political parties about every 10 to 30 years. You can look at the Republican Revolution in the 1980s, and I'm only going to go back to the 1980s because JJ and I are about 40 years old, and I feel like going back to when we were born is long ago. All right. Reagan Revolution in the 1980s, far back enough. Reagan appealed to what we would call evangelical Christians. At the time, these were, prior to that, they wouldn't have been considered part of the political establishment. After Reagan, they were very much a part of the political establishment. They became part of Reagan's base. And eventually they even became part of the Democratic base. They became part of, were something that both parties had to consider. And then, of course, in the 1990s, you had the Clinton Revolution, which, for better or worse, was a shift in the Democratic Party. You could argue that Bush 2 was his own revolution with, the internet and, of course, the war on terror. But that was less of an internal revolution and more had to do with what was going on in the world at the time. Around 2010, we had, in the US at least, the Tea Party coming in, and it was tapping into the 2009 sort of on the Democratic side, there was Occupy Wall Street and the Obama Revolution. On the Republican side, which Obama hated and didn't do anything for, but on the Republican side, Tea Party, which was very much funded by the Koch family, it was about low taxes, don't tread on me, very libertarian. And it eventually took control of the Republican Party, and that's what the Republican Party came for another 10 years. So it's all of this is building off each other, and it's one big movement towards what Trump eventually became. You can see a progression. So, yes, I don't think what JJ is saying is right. I don't think that the Republican Party is just going to go back to sort of the Newt Gingrich 1990s model of Republican Party of low taxes and being for the rich. For one thing, if you look at the Democratic Party right now, that's kind of what they are. So why wouldn't someone who's in favor of low taxes on the rich vote for just a Democrat? So yeah, there's that. So now I want to split this up into another part and looking at why I think it's actually beneficial. Prior to Trump allowing these people into the Republican Party, there's this idea of the Overton window, which JJ talks about in his video. The Overton window is this idea that there is a range of political thought and conversation which journalists and politicians can speak about and will speak about. And what's acceptable to the public at large is this big. What is acceptable for politicians to speak about is this big. What's acceptable for journalists to write about is this big. But what I think Donald Trump did was he was like, fuck the Overton window. I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about, and I'm just going to do whatever I want. And he just expanded the Overton window and was like, you know what? People are struggling. I'm going to tap into that. People are racist. I'm going to tap into that. People have this going on. I'm going to tap into that. And that's a pretty good strategy from a political standpoint. That's going to gain you a lot of votes. A lot of votes. That's not unreasonable from a political standpoint. And yeah. On the other side, Bernie Sanders in 2016, when Donald Trump first ran, did a lot of the same things, although from a lot less of a sort of racially motivated standpoint. Prior to 2016, it was not acceptable for Democrats to talk about things like universal health care in the United States, or the idea that withdrawing from Afghanistan was just not an acceptable thing. That was a third rail in Washington. Bernie Sanders brought it up. Withdrawing from Iraq was just not a thought. Withdrawing completely. Withdrawing some troops was sort of like, okay, we can start doing that a little bit. That's just things that Bernie started to bring in and expand. These two people coming in at the same time, they expanded the Overton window, allowing in a little bit more political thought so that people had realized, oh, it's more than just uber capitalism. Uber capitalism, and some of the younger people realized, oh shit, uber capitalism actually is sometimes pretty bad and pretty harmful. And it's gotten to the point where even now Kamala Harris realizes that she can't win an election without having at least some progressive policies on her agenda. Now, I disagree with, I think that her policies are dumb and actively harmful, but she at least has them. And she realizes, I will lose if I don't have at least some progressive policies. So it is beneficial that this discussion is being had now. I'm going to cut this off here into a third part. Racism is a problem in the United States, as it is a problem in Canada, as it is a problem in Britain, as it is a problem in India. But the United States has a really bad history of dealing with it. I don't think there's no evidence, at least, that suppressing racists is a good way of dealing with it. I think that will lead to the Oklahoma City bombing again. For those of you who don't know what that is, in 1996, he wasn't affiliated with any particular group. He was a lone gunman type person. Purchased. Short answer is two men, Timothy McVeigh, he blew up a federal building in Oklahoma City for racist reasons. That's the long and short of it. And ignoring that problem doesn't make it go away. In fact, you could make an argument very easily that ignoring the problem actually makes it worse. Because the problem just sits there, and it gets more and more angry and bubbles up and bubbles up and bubbles up like, a pressure cooker. And it keeps getting more and more pressure, more and more pressure, more and more pressure, more and more pressure until it explodes like, another Charlottesville. And we've got another Donald Trump on our hands. So yeah, I think ignoring it is not a solution. Suppressing it is not a solution. We have to find a way to better integrate these people into our society. I don't have a great solution for that right now, but smarter people than I are working on it. Thank you.